From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The view from above.
I'm Charles Denny. Sensors on drones are now being used to detect plant diseases and problems in Tennessee agricultural fields. Research that's flying high overhead. That story from Jackson, Tennessee, coming up on AgDay.
As voters make their opinions known when it comes to key issues impacting the heartland, and when it comes to who will lead the nation.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president.
But what happens next? The possible fallout for farmers and ranchers right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's Bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Donald Trump has secured a second term in the White House. Mr. Trump obtaining wins in key battleground states over Democratic challenger Vice President Kamala Harris. He becomes the second person in U.S. history to win 2 non-consecutive terms as commander-in-chief, but Republicans also made gains in Congress after the GOP secured enough seats to take control of the Senate. At last report, the House of Representatives remained too close to call on which party will ultimately have that majority.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
It is worth noting that President-elect Trump garnered even stronger support in rural America this time around. Farm Journal Washington analyst Jim Wiesmeyer saying the support from the heartland was likely backlash against the ag policy moves of the Biden-Harris administration.
He actually got more rural votes than he did in 2020 and 2016. So, I mean, he expanded his universe there. And it looks like for the first time since 2004, Republicans won the popular vote. So, I mean, that says it all right there, too, because, you know, with California and New York, you usually don't win the popular vote, but he did.
And Donald Trump has promised sweeping action in the second administration, and that is being met with both optimism and some hesitancy in farm country. AgDay's Michelle Rook continues our team coverage, and Michelle, trade is at the top of many people's minds.
It is, Clinton, and that's why the election results are a bit of a double-edged sword for agriculture. Now, the good news is the Trump presidency and at least a Republican-controlled Senate may result in less regulations and lower taxes and at least partial support for biofuels policy. Now, the bad news is the U.S. could be headed for a possible trade war, and not just with China. The future of trade is top of mind post-election. Washington insiders like Mary Kay Thatcher say President Trump's trade agenda won't include renegotiation of a trade deal with China as they didn't comply with Phase 1. Instead, he'll immediately increase tariffs on China and other trading partners, which could mean a trade war and the demise of U.S. export markets.
I think you have to believe that because President-elect Trump was so strong on doing tariffs before, that it's very likely that he'll follow through now. I mean, he's talked about at a minimum 20% tariffs on everybody. He's talked about 60% on China, who's still our #1 ag export customer, likely to fall to 2 or 3, but still a very important market. And he's talked about putting him on Mexico if Mexico doesn't stop as many people coming across the border.
On taxes, it's possible most of the expiring 2017 tax cuts will be renewed. Yet it may depend on if the House is controlled by the Republicans or Democrats, since Thatcher doesn't believe Congress will want to increase the deficit.
You know, just extending the things that will expire at the end of 2025, like estate taxes and 199A taxes on co-ops and individual income tax rates, et cetera, those things, that's $4.6 trillion on top of an already really sad budget deficit and the debt of this country.
On energy policy, Thatcher sees at least partial support for biofuels because of rural America's support for Trump in the election. That includes programs like 45Z that are tied to climate and conservation and supported in Congress. However, she says they may be trimmed.
I don't look for him to go in and just overturn the whole thing, because especially if you think about some of those initiatives that they had to do with agriculture, there are numerous farmers out there who have benefited from those programs and are going to speak up in support of it.
And there will be less regulations under this president in Congress. In fact, Thatcher expects a large share to go by the wayside even before the new president takes office, and a domino effect after that.
If there's a Republican House, we'll be using what they call the Congressional Review Act, which means they can look back at regulations that have been written within the last 60 legislative days, and they can try to overturn those.
And another big election outcome is there are 50 to 60 new members of Congress that need to be educated about the importance of agriculture to the country. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Among the issues on the ballot, South Dakota voters voting down a controversial $8.9 billion carbon capture pipeline project. The referendum, known as Referred Law 21, was to determine whether to keep or repeal a recently passed law that critics say favored pipeline developers, particularly Summit Carbon Solutions, a 2,500-mile pipeline that would move carbon dioxide from ethanol plants, was scheduled to run through multiple states, including Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. Summit insisted it would continue pursuing the project regardless of the vote outcome. In neighboring North Dakota, residents voted no to Measure 4. It would have ended certain types of property tax in the state. Critics have said such a law would have led to dramatic cuts in state services, with one state panel estimating the cost of replacing lost property tax revenue more than $3 billion every 2 years. Now, supporters of the plan believe the property tax infringes on their private property rights. And in Denver, Colorado, voters rejected Ordinance 309, which would have banned slaughterhouses in the city. Denver is a hub of lamb processing for the state and the nation. It represents up to 20% of U.S. lamb harvest capacity. Those opposed to the ban say it puts jobs at stake and at least $215 million in economic benefits. Winter arriving to the plains Tuesday night and into Wednesday. This is what it looked like on the Nebraska-Colorado border, with heavy snow falling along the I-80, I-76 interchange, with most of the snow in the Cornhusker State staying west of North Platte. Areas of Colorado measuring between 8 and 10 inches of snow on Wednesday. And the snow is continuing to fall in areas of the west, while the south is in for some strong rain. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter joins us with the very latest.
As we start to make our way throughout November, of course, we get closer and closer to winter, and actually in our higher elevations, especially in the foothills and actually at the top there in the Rocky Mountains, we are actually starting to see some snowfall starting to build up. Take a look at this down here in looks like New Mexico, actually starting to see some decent accumulation, at least over 3-5 inches of snow falling at the top of those mountains, and it looks like it's pretty much the only part of the country. Also starting to see a little bit of snowfall just north of Seattle there, up there in Canada, starting to spread up actually into Colorado as well, as we start to see those snowfalls and of course those cool air temperatures moving throughout the country. And we love all these videos you all are sharing of putting up the wraps on harvest. Ethan of Central Nebraska sharing this video with us. Ethan says this is the earliest he has been done in quite some time. We'll have that whole forecast in just a second.
Commodity markets taking the day on Wednesday to process election results, turning more positive as the day went on. We'll dig into it coming up next in Markets Now. And later, drones are finding plenty of new uses in agriculture. We'll see how researchers at Tennessee are putting them to work today in the country. A new report says farming accounted for about 10.5% of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2022. Now, this chart from the Economic Research Service breaking it down for us. It says from 2021 to 2022, ag greenhouse gas emissions decreased by more than 18 million metric tons and decreased from 10.8% of the U.S. economy's entire emissions to 10.5%. Now, the biggest share of the ag emissions coming direct from nitrous oxide, followed by methane and carbon dioxide, and indirectly from electricity the ag sector uses. Meanwhile, EPA has identified the industrial sector as the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, followed by transportation. The market's reacting strongly to word of another Trump presidency, with corn making some gains while soybeans fought to stay in the green. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us with more reaction in Markets Now.
Well, a mostly higher day in grains on Wednesday after the election, with the exception of some of the wheat contracts. Darren Fry with Water Street Solutions is back with us. Darren, it was impressive to see after some steep losses in the overnight session there on Tuesday night that the grains came back despite the election results and a sharply higher dollar.
Yeah, it sure was. You know, the dollar just ripped out of the gates once everybody thought Trump was going to win. And we did see the grains take it a little bit on the chin there in the overnights. But when we came into the day session, corn really led us higher. You know, wheat didn't do too much, but the corn was really the main one, and bean oil that led things back to unchanged or even higher in the day.
So, Darren, do you think that the grain shook off the election news just because there's thoughts that we might get a flush of export business before January 20th?
You know, that could be the case. I mean, before he takes office, I know that we're talking mainly about China when we think of our exports being affected by Trump, because the other people like Mexico taking our corn, they're going to continue to take our corn. Other origins continue to need our products. But we haven't seen China really in for corn. We've seen them taking a lot of beans, but they're still buying Brazilian boats. And so we had a big crop coming down in Brazil and in Argentina as well. South America is going to be a whopper of a crop this next year unless they enter any type of dry weather, maybe after, December into January. But right now things look good. And it's either they're trying to maybe get some stuff ahead of time, or the fact that China, they've struggled. Their economy is not real healthy right now, and they've had to do some things to stimulate that. And they're not in the same position they were 4 years ago when Trump served his first term. So I'm just wondering if maybe exports aren't going to be quite as bad as everyone thought now that Trump's won.
The key is, do we get any follow-through buying?
That's $1 million question. I mean, the charts really look good going home. You saw a huge range day in soybeans, a huge lower shadow on the candlestick chart. You saw corn really act well. I mean, close through some key resistance areas. Clearing 424, 425 area was really important on D's corn today. And so we should see follow through, but always time will tell.
Appreciate it, Darren, for Water Street Solutions. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
For marketing strategies specific to your operation, contact Water Street Solutions at 866-249-2528 or online at www.waterstreetconsulting.com.
Here's a look at our current drought monitor, and unfortunately, especially for this time of year, everybody is very, very dry, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. One, it's great for harvest because a lot of people can have those crops dry out and go in and harvest them quickly. The issue is a lot of our rivers and that groundwater is starting to dry up just because of the lack of rainfall. Taking a look out east, we can see those abnormally dry conditions all the way down the panhandle of Florida, going all the way up into Maine, and actually parts of Maine, especially by Bangor there, actually seeing moderate levels of drought. Moving to the middle of the country in the plains, as we can see Red River down there in Texas and Oklahoma, very, very dry, dealing with that severe drought setting in, and then a large expansion of moderate to severe drought in the northern plains as well. So kind of a rough situation that we're starting to see take hold across the country. Good news is there is some moisture on the way, especially from the Gulf. This is our precipitation estimate moving forward. And as we can see, we're getting a nice slug of moisture, especially for the eastern part of the Four Corner states and over there by Texas, by the panhandles of both Oklahoma and Texas. And a lot of this actually will be falling as snow as cooler temperatures move in. That being said, we could be looking at some more moderate showers by thunderstorms falling again just south there of the Red River. Now looking out east, also seeing a surge of moisture moving on the east coast, again from Jacksonville all the way up through Wilmington as well, seeing some of that moisture move in, and we're just going to be seeing the expansion of it as we see this cutoff low pressure pressure system really start and dump a lot of rain over a high pressure ridge. And we're going to see that right now. Here's that jet stream, and here is that low pressure system again right over the Four Corner states, bringing those cooler temperatures. Again, they're going to be seeing snow later on this week, but here's that big ridge that this low has to overcome. And as it starts to ride up the ridge, it will be depositing a good chunk of moisture through much of the country. So again, very, very good news there as we see another trough and ridge system set up again. Orange, we're looking at 65 degrees and a low of 37 degrees. Here's our pink, Oklahoma, partly cloudy, 66 degrees, low of 52 degrees, and ending with white, Arkansas, 73 degrees, low of 60 degrees.
Feedlot margins declined while the break-even for cattle producers increased. That's according to the latest numbers in the Sterling Beef Profit Tracker. Negotiated cash cattle increased an average of 25 cents per hundredweight at the end of last week, while feedlot margins dropped $67 per head to an industry average of just over $129 per head. Meanwhile, beef packers saw profits drop $32 per head to a loss of about $15 per head. Cattle marketed last week, they carried a total feed cost of over $466 per head. The latest U.S. red meat trade statistics showed growth in beef in September. Exports of U.S. beef totaled almost 104,000 metric tons. That's up 5% year over year, while export value climbed 6%.
You look at Japan and Mexico, both had very good months, up 10 and 20% respectively. And Taiwan, a very important chilled beef program market, up about 35% at 4,700 tons. And I think one of the themes that stands out on the beef side is that we are really starting to see the food service sector rebound throughout most of Asia. And a lot of that is being driven by tourism.
Hallstrom says U.S. beef continues to perform well in Central America, up 15% in September. Getting an eye in the sky is a great way to see what's happening in the field. Up next, how drones are helping researchers learn more about the growing season in the country. Since their invention, drones have become a valuable tool in farming. The University of Tennessee's Institute of Agriculture is researching how sensors attached to drones might provide valuable information to farmers as the machines fly high over crops. Charles Denny tells us how crop health can be improved with this overhead view.
What's now a piece of farm equipment almost as commonplace as a combine or harvester on some farms. Many Tennessee producers use drones to monitor crops. Also called UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles, these machines can dart through the air just above a field or soar high overhead if needed. Here at the controls, Elias Zucchelli, UT Herbert College of Agriculture graduate student in plant pathology. At the UT Ag Research Center in Jackson, he's doing research on drone sensors and their ability to detect plant diseases.
The drone itself is the vehicle, the platform that we use. And the important part is the sensor that the drone is mounted into it. So like you have different sensors that will go in the drone. The drone helps on that because it can map like a very big area, and then with the sensor you can pretty much pick it up what areas in the field are sick or not.
Zucchelli says the sensors use infrared camera lenses to spot disease leaves from above. He's coupling that with AI technology and extracting temperature measurements from aerial photographs to see if there's a connection between disease development and weather patterns.
Like what is the growth stage behind the plant, like how big is that plant, and we can go as in deep detail to be able to understand, like to be able to see a disease before the plant show its symptoms.
Elias is from Brazil, one of the largest agricultural countries on the planet, where they grow crops almost year-round because of the climate. His family farms, and he wanted his career to be about helping agriculture. Zucchelli is working with UT Extension crop specialist Heather Kelly, who says drones give growers great information on how to manage their crops.
aerial imagery, has been around for a while, but the newer thing is now understanding how it fits into a disease management tool. And so that's really the main focus of our program and our project is developing the data.
Zucchelli continues to fly drones and collect information from up high. Much more than graduate school homework, his research stands to be a benefit to many in ag. So much of farming is about decision making. A view from above gives a producer options and new perspectives. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.